how could they not know this? So you're good on that.
There's things you can know and things you can't not know.
Tell us the good stuff.
Hi, everybody.
How are you?
Sorry for the delay, but works out well. It's only an hour class for some reason. I looked at my clock. I'm on at 3:30. I got plenty of time to run home, leave the town in the morning. Exclusive right to sell. As I catch my breath and sweat. My name is John Dyer. I'm your managing broker here. Hi, everybody out there on the internet world. We're going to talk about listings today. The exclusive right to sell and other types. This, my friend, is the most important form in all of real estate as a professional that does this for a living. Why?
It's the start of a series of events, and it's a contract that binds both.
Oh, I'm going much more mercenary than that. This is what includes us getting paid a commission.
Well, details.
This is what gets us paid for. So it is pretty much important for a professional. Now, if you're doing this as a volunteer, you don't need these. But most of us are in it for the money. It is also, I would guess, I figure 50% of full-time professionals have read the purchase contract. I bet 10% of agents have ever actually read the listing in one read. It's not the most exciting document. It falls in certain categories. I'd have to do my standard, repeat myself. You have a fiduciary duty to do perfect paperwork. If you don't do perfect paperwork on a purchase contract, that can cost you deals, relationships, and get you sued. If you don't do your paperwork correct on a listing, that can result in a deal going perfectly and you not getting paid for it. And I want to start this class where I should be ending it by talking about some case law. I've referenced this on the mastermind, so you heard this in my classes. A listing, I believe, is 322153.02, subsection 1, defines what a listing agreement must have. It defines both our employment agreements. We have three kinds of employment agreements. We have a listing agreement, we have a buyer broker agreement, and we have a property management agreement. I'm happy to say I don't have to deal with the third one. Buyer broker agreements are the exception, not the rule, but listings are there, and it has to have meet certain requirements. This is it calls an exclusive right to sell. It is in legal terms an employment agreement. I'm not bragging, I'm applying for a job, hire me, I want you to be happy. It is a bilateral agreement. And there's a case that everybody needs to read. National Association of Realtors did a little write-up on it. If you Google, Young versus Rose, real estate, the case will pop up, and I think the first thing that pops up is NAR's analysis. It is very important. Because it is a bilateral agreement, it requires signature of all parties, acceptance and delivery, a beginning and ending date, a price and terms clearly set forth, but most importantly, signature of all parties and acceptance and delivery. And why I want to start by sharing Rose versus Young is because I review the majority of the documents. And the number one reason I reject contracts is because there's a clerical error. Something that's not necessarily a deal killer, it's just a potential problem, so I make you fix it. When I reject listings, it's usually a validity issue. That means most of the listings I reject are not valid, not worth the paper they're written on. And probably the number 2 reason I reject listings is they're not signed by the agent. The number 1 reason is because we forget to put initial boxes on line 69. If you check does allow a lockbox, you have to put an initial box there. But that is not criminal. That's probably not going to lead to any huge problems. We're going to make you fix it. Not signing your listing falls under the case of Young versus Rose. And here's what happened. Now, this was a buyer broker agreement, but this is subsection A is listings of 2153.02. Subsection B is buyer broker agreements. So exactly the same law prevails, and the precedent set in this case applies to this document, which is why I'm adding the listing to the rotation every time, hoping I get everyone over this before it costs us. Ms. Young, I understand she's an awesome agent, really nice lady, don't know her personally, but I've never heard a bad thing about her. She's an agent at Realty Executives. She had a buyer broker agreement with the Roses, who understand we're attorneys, and her buyer broker agreement expired. She continued to send them stuff through the portal or however she was giving them information. She sent them a new buyer broker agreement. Here's the key. The clients, the buyers, which would be the same as the seller, signed it. Sent it back to her. She replied, thanks, put it in her file. They went and bought a $4 million home from someone else. She said, we have a buyer broker agreement. They says, no, we don't. It's a bilateral employment agreement. Bilateral agreement requires signature of all parties, and acceptance and delivery is the final stage of all contracts. We know that. The courts ruled, nope, replying thanks does not constitute a digital acknowledgement, because her argument was saying thanks and saying I got it is the same as signing in the digital world. And why it's a really good case to read is because digital signatures are an inherent part of our industry now, and it's new law. But it basically the court ruled no, and she took it up. She took it up the food chain. They said no, you did not sign it, and give them a copy. It was never valid, and she lost. I'm sure she probably paid their legal fees. By the way, let's be very clear. Heirs and admissions companies will literally have nothing to do with commissions. That's them and the Department of Real Estate. E&O protects us from screwing up and clients losing money. It does not protect us from screwing up and us losing money. Okay? No one can help you on this one. And now there's solid court precedent. So when you get an ER, anyway, an ER exclusive agency, we'll talk about the other types, make sure that you sign and deliver a copy. Because one day, a seller's gonna walk into a title company in escrow on a multi-million-dollar home and go, do not pay my damn broker. And the title company's going to say, why? You were in MLS, here's the co-broke offered to the other agency. And the seller's gonna go, yeah, well, I never had a valid listing. Per the court case, Rose versus Young, 2015, Scottsdale, Arizona, I don't owe a commission. They're going to go to their legal department, and their legal department's going to call me and say, Mr. Dyer, we have some bad news. We can't pay you. And I'm going to call the agent and say, dude, you screwed up. You're not getting paid. And then I'm really going to ruin that agent's day. Because I'm going to say, you know this $2 million home, let's say, that you had a nice fat co-broken MLS for? Co-broken MLS is not conditional upon receipt of commissions by the listing agent. It's a universal promise to pay. So not only is that poor sap not going to get paid, that poor sap's going to have to come out of pocket for the co-broke as well they should, because no buyer broker should be punished because a listing agent screwed up. Sign your listings. Send them through DocuSign. Always make yourself a signer, because DocuSign, e-sign, first of all, you have digital cloud encrypted proof that you signed a copy and it was sent to them. And it automatically sends a copy to everybody. It'll also send you a copy. If you have to, if you're doing wet signatures, holy Moses, you sign them first. Because that is going to be one of the worst days of my life as a broker, is when I have to call an agent and tell them that. And if you don't think there are lawyers out there looking through MLS for pending properties with high dollars on them, thinking, hey, I can knock on a seller's door and say, I'll save you 10 grand. I'll save you 40 grand if you pay me 10. All I need to do is write a letter. It's going to happen. Be careful. Now, we have multiple types of employment agreements, of listing agreements. The most standard one, typical one we work with, is the exclusive right to sell. What that means, it is a fully binding exclusive document. If that seller transfers title, and here's the key, transfers title during the time that this thing applies, or under a contract that was executed prior to expiration of this, they owe us a commission, period, end of story, okay? Another type of listing is an exclusive agency listing. And every now and then, people use exclusive agency listings. In one case of the 10 I've questioned, they did it on purpose. The other 9, and this is why you want to be careful when you're in zip forms, make sure you grab the ER, not the EA. Because an exclusive agency listing means if any real estate brokerage in Arizona is involved in that transaction, we get paid. But the seller, and you may remember this from Russell Shaw's commercial, sell it yourself and pay no fee. The seller can sell for sale by owner. They can sell it themselves. And if they procure a buyer directly, we're not entitled to compensation. Exclusive agency is a rare thing. There are situations where it makes sense, but just be careful, make sure you have the right form. The other type of listing I'm going to talk about briefly doesn't exist. Why would I talk about something that doesn't exist? Because people do them. And I have to do my silly rabbit ears quotes. It's called an exclusive listing. There's no such thing. There's exclusive right to sell and exclusive agency. The term people use, exclusive, which is really stupid. It came along in 2003. I don't know who came up with the idea. The word term exclusive is used for an exclusive right to sell that has a little note in the additional terms that says, does not go in MLS, broker will not cooperate with other brokerages. Basically, it means I put a sign in the yard, if someone wants to buy it, they got to buy it through me. It's an up yours to other brokers. It became very popular during the bubble. If you do that, make sure you're very clear to your seller, because I've been with buyer broker agreements and written offers on people. They say, you can't write an offer on this. We have an exclusive. I says, the law says you have to present all offers. And then when they presented it to the seller, they were ticked off because they had a buyer broker fee built in there. And in one case, the seller called me direct, and I had trouble not talking to him because he didn't understand why I needed a buyer broker fee when he was paying commission, and half of which was supposed to go to me. Make sure your sellers understand. If I get a phone call in that scenario where you did an exclusive and your seller didn't know what they were doing and they thought they were going MLS, they thought there'd be a co-broke, that's not going to be a fun phone call for either of us. All right, exclusive right to sell, listing contract and legal language. It is a binding contract. There are consequences. Some of the consequences are potentially for a seller. There are tax loopholes. There are tax exemptions for selling your own property, things like that, capital gains exceptions. But there are situations where a seller sells a property, there are tax consequences. If they're an investor, you may want to advise them to get tax advice, especially if they're pulling a chunk of cash. You may want them to take a look at a 1031 exchange, because capital gains does still exist. Most of it dealing straight up resale deals. Here's the deal though. We know it's there. We need to warn them of the possibility and advise them to get help. What we can't do is give any indication we know what it is, because we're not tax accountants, we're not attorneys, we're not allowed to do that. We can express our concern and tell them to go get help. We can never give the impression that we are that help. All right, exclusive right to sell or rent. I'm only going to read a little bit of this. In consideration, acceptance, the assigned licensed Arizona real estate broker of the terms of the listing contract and brokers promise to endeavor to effect a, please check the right boxes. You have sale, rental, or sale and rental of both of the property described below, referred to as the premises. I or we as owners employ and grant the broker exclusive and irrevocable right, okay? It is binding. The seller can't simply change their mind. I have sellers call all the time and say, I want to cancel. I said, well, that's between you and the listing agent. I don't cancel listings just because the seller calls. I ask why, and sometimes they say, because I don't want to sell the house. I say, well then talk to your agent about temporarily off the market. Because most people say that they don't want to sell their house. As soon as the listing agent cancels, a sign pops up with another brokerage that they had interviewed before while their house was still on the market, because some unethical sap went out there and ran us. So if you have a cancellation, you may want to make the cancellation canceled under one condition. Should they list a property on exclusive right to sell basis prior to what would be the expiration, that we receive our full compensation. Because people will lie to you and they'll scam their way out of a listing. Now my opinion is, because this says we will endeavor to sell, to effect the sale. Any seller that signs this listing without a performance guarantee, job description, marketing plan that says exactly what you're going to do, how much you're going to spend, that you're actually going to get off your butt and work for them, is an idiot. Because all it really basically says we're going to do, and I'll go through this, is put a sign in the yard, put MLS, and put a lockbox on it. And any seller that's willing to pay what they pay us for those three things is an idiot. Sellers, you know, and I think you want to get lots of listings, have a good, solid marketing plan, performance guarantee, sign it and say, if I don't do this, fire me. Then you have, if they decide to terminate, it would be based on accountability of commitments you didn't make. But if the seller wants to sign without something like that, you essentially own the right to sell that property for as long as this thing lasts. Now, commencing on and ending on. How long do you want a listing for? Long as you can get it. I mean, in this market, some people say they like to do a year. In this market, if you need a year to sell a house, you really overpriced it or it's a really bad house. There are certain parts of town you could take a 17-hour listing and have 15 hours to spare. I think my girlfriend's last 2 listings were on the market for 7 hours each. But I like to do them for at least 6 months. And the reason you want to do, I want to have time that if you do a deal and it falls through, that I still have the property listed. The length of time for which you take a listing is 100% your discretion. You can take them for 2 days if you want, you can take them for 10 years if you want. Actually, no, you can't. I'm going to say we don't allow 10-year listings. You can't take a listing that I'm likely to die of old age before it expires. Use me as your barometer. All right, ending on that date, to sell, rent, exchange, option, premise described above. Owner acknowledges signing more than one exclusive right to sell or other form of listing could expose the owner to multiple commissions. That is why, when you talk to a seller, if a seller says, hey, I want to talk to you about selling my house, the first words out of your mouth are you listed with someone else? And if they say yes, say, I can't talk to you as long as you're listed with someone else. It's a myth that if the seller contacts you, you can go do a listing appointment when it's listed with someone else, okay? That's contractual interference, regardless of who initiated it. That's complete BS. Don't do it. There's numerous ethics cases and a couple of legal cases that says it cannot and it should not be done. All right, listing price shall be. Who chooses the price for sale or rent? Not me. Who advises on price? Me. How do you advise someone on price?
Comparables.
Solid, empirical data, as recent as possible, as like to like as possible, and use the magic number price per square foot. Because if you say $100,000, boom, they think $100,000. If you say $78 to $84 a square foot, then they're going to understand that the market forces would determine that gap. The crappiest neighborhood, house in neighborhood 78, top of the mark, maybe 104 or more. And then you give them the empirical data. Make sure your seller makes a good decision. I'm of the opinion that agents who will list for any price, hoping to get them to come down, are dumb. And I say that because I've exploited that so many times as an agent. They list a property too high, it's on the market 90 days, the listing expires, they want more time, and they don't get it. Then the seller gives me the listing for a reasonable price, I sell it in 2 days, and that poor sap wasted 90 days of their life because they didn't have the good sense to advise the seller for proper pricing. And people say in this market you can ask anything. That's baloney. There are still limits. And one of the things you always want to talk about a seller with is, see this data I'm showing you here? This is the data that an appraiser is going to use. Unless you have a cash buyer, the value of your home, this is, everybody says the value of a home is determined between what a buyer is willing to pay and a seller is willing to sell for. That is crap. It is not true. A home is worth what a buyer is willing to pay, a seller is willing to take, and a lender is willing to give money on, because the vast majority of transactions are financed. Very few people walk in as the majority stockholder in their house. They're a minority. The appraiser represents the investor and is going to be tight and conservative. They're going to continue to be tight and conservative. They're not going to give us any love. So a seller needs to understand you may be setting yourself up for failure. That's why if you accept concessions, you know, when I do concessions, if I'm concerned about appraisal, I'll put right in the counter. If the property appraises low, the concessions go away first, and we don't have to renegotiate. So if I have 3% concessions, and the appraisal comes in 3% low, the buyers have already agreed to remove the concessions and pay that appraisal. Why set yourself for that argument? Because if you do it down the road, the buyer has more leverage than if you deal with it up front. All right. Sales tax, rental taxes apply, and for the profile sheet, which we're going to talk about briefly. The premises. Please get your address and stuff right. No one is going to take your license or sue you or fine you because you put your address wrong in MLS. Agents are just going to harass the heck out of you and say, hey dummy, you put your address in wrong. It sounds like something that never happens. It happens more than you think. It's not because agents are stupid or bad or incompetent. It's because they hit the wrong numbers on the keyboard. The one problem is, if you type it wrong on the ER, you're almost certain to put it wrong in MLS. Assessor number, please have that. City, town, county, state, country.
Does country really matter?
I'm amused by that. I don't think our listing is applicable in other countries, but yet we put it on there. Good old US of A. Legal description. You need a legal description, okay? Put it in there. It ain't rocket science. TBD is not a legal description, it's TUBD. In escrow is not a legal description. If it's lot 14 Paradise Hills, don't be a lame-o, right? Type lot 14 Paradise Hills. Now, section B is huge. One of the not deal-killing, not lawsuit-inducing, closing annoyance areas has always been disagreements over fixtures and personal property. And it is typically because of misconceptions, false assumptions. We put it on the contract, now we put it on the listing. Just remember, all this stuff we're going to talk about on the listing transfers to the contract with the exception of exceptions. If there's something in here that does not stay, you need to make sure it's specifically listed on the contract, because this quite literally has nothing to do with the contract. This is defining our representation, okay? Contract's when we exercise our representation. This defines our compensation. Contract is when we earn our compensation. Representation, compensation, two different things. Except as excluded in section 3C, okay, in the contract, okay? Here's the go, you know, things that are included. Make sure seller understands the toughies. Let's see the toughies. Remote controls. If they have fans with remote controls or garage door openers, make sure you arrange for them to leave them. People don't steal them maliciously. They just take off to Minnesota with them and don't want to spend the money to mail them back. And that's nice, going to be somewhere between $42 and $105 for you, the real estate agent, because somehow or another that's one of those, I'd rather buy a remote control than listen to the people whine category. I bought a few of them. Fireplace equipment, check it. It used to be.
Those remotes, what if they never had it? Like, it needs a remote, but what if they say they never had it?
If they never had it, they don't got to leave it. But they have a garage door opener that's mechanical, and they live there, I always question that. How do they get in and out of their garage? If it's vacant, they usually never had it, they just lost it. But if they have it, they have to deliver it. And if I were listed a house and they didn't have it, I would tell them to go buy one. All right, fireplace equipment is a tough one because, excuse me, it's changed. Fireplace equipment used to be, whether it was attached or not, considered part of the fireplace. Most of my career, if it was there, it stayed, including the fireplace tools. Now, it clearly states affixed. And the reason that's an issue is because, well, come to my house. You go to my house, you look at my fireplace, you look at my fireplace screen, and I say, is that part of the fireplace? Is that screwed down? You're going to say, sure looks like it. It's a perfect fit. It looks like it's part of the fireplace. Problem is, I can walk up and go. Well, no, it's really heavy, so. Okay, mine would not stay. You need to make sure if you list one of something like, you go check it and you tell the seller, do you want this to stay or are you taking it? And then you need to make sure that you disclose whichever way. Most sellers choose to leave them. Why? It's like window coverings. What are the odds you're going to find another house with exactly the same size windows? I've had people take those things. You couldn't find another office in America that's going to fit those blinds right there. But yet, people tend to take them. If a seller tells you that there's something on this list they don't want to take, that they plan on taking, they don't want to leave, here's my advice. This will always be my advice. Before you put the house on the market, get it the hell out of there. You'd be amazed how attached someone can be to a ceiling fan. And then they find out, and not leaving the ceiling fan that's attached is done. Because people love them. What? You're going to leave a hole in the ceiling? And the answer is yeah. So if they're taking a ceiling fan, remind them it's never going to mount right again, and then tell them to replace it. If anything that they're taking. Now, I should say fixtures that don't stay, replacing. Here's one that's a problem. Because the Death Star is almost fully operational. We live in Phoenix. We know what the Death Star is. And it ain't something in Star Wars that blows up planets. It's the damn sun that lights up every time of year this time of year. Well, in here it clearly states, and in section 5A of the contract says property will be in substantially the same condition. Here it states, outdoor landscaping, shrubbery, trees, unpotted plants, etc. They not only have to stay, they have to stay alive. Every year, we have one seller. I've had one seller. One of my agents has the seller that turns their water off and kills the yard. Kills some shrubs, kills some trees. Desert landscaping lasts pretty good. You got grass or green shrubs, they're going to die. It has to be delivered alive. And nothing will upset a seller more than what I saw. And it wasn't it wasn't my agent. Their agent advised them to turn the water off. They had basically a quarter acre of sod. It really died really bad, and it was thousands and thousands of dollars to have that sod replaced. They had no choice. I'm pretty sure it was a pretty hefty price house. I'm pretty sure those thousands of dollars were removed from that agent's commission, and it was nasty. And they also can't take them. So it's my favorite bush. Tough. If it's your favorite bush, replace it before you put the house on the market, or we're going to have to remember to exclude it, which is probably not going to be remembered at contract time. The other one here, wall-mounted TVs and brackets, okay? The brackets and the hardware stay, the TV doesn't, which is a problem, because now you have big brackets sticking out of a wall. You have sellers that assume, I want to take it with me. I bought it custom for my TV. Those things aren't that expensive. The most expensive one I've seen was $350, and it was for a dual mount for a super heavy television, okay? The problem with taking them is, they exclude them in the contract, say brackets go. When they take them off the wall, they have to repair the wall so it matches the room, so it's in substantially the same condition without the latent material defects. And let me tell you, the bolts on those stinking TV brackets, they're not little screws. They're big, go in the, in the stud bolts, because those things are holding up things that can be 100 pounds. They leave the wall ugly. It's usually cheaper just to leave it and let the buyer figure out what to do with that big weird black arm sticking out of the wall, and whether or not they want to buy a TV to match it. I would certainly buy a TV to match it, because I don't like doing drywall repair anymore. I used to do it for a living. I'm moving along. Just make sure that if anything stays, that they acknowledge it. Washer, dryer, refrigerator. Remember that if it's personal property, it doesn't matter what you put on the listing or an MLS, it has to be referenced in the contract. If you're representing a buyer, make sure it's in the contract. But go through this part clearly with every seller.
John, isn't it a normalist rule that utilities and lights, utilities and power have to be left on?
It's not an armless rule, it's a contract term.
It's in the purchase contract?
Contract clearly states, all utilities must be on for inspections.
Yeah.
Yeah, including,
Well,
including propane.
For inspections, but what about for people showing homes?
No.
I shot video for a home the other day, and power was on, but the water wasn't.
I tell my sellers to turn the water off. Not at the street, to the house. I don't want people peeing and pooping in my listings, and I've had 2 listings where the pipes busted and flood. The problem with a vacant house, which is who people are gonna have the water off, is a vacant house.
Yeah.
Problem with vacant houses, if you don't run the water very often, and you turn the water on, that's when the pipes are most likely to burst. So having had a $500,000 kitchen get completely destroyed because a little kid went upstairs and plugged the tub, turned the water on, and then everybody just left, and someone showed the house a day later with, you know, water coming out of the front door. So I advise my sellers, leave the water inside the house off. Leave it on to your sprinklers, but turn off the valve to the house, because people will do that. They'll turn the water on, plus they'll use the bathroom. And they don't tend to be very hygienic. I also take toilet paper out of houses. There's no reason to poop in a listed house. So there's your reason. 2 schools of thought.
Are people allowed to use the restroom in a listing?
It's impolite. You know, I had a broker that said if you're a guy, it's hilarious. He said if you're a guy, don't use the bathroom, use the backyard. I'm like, well, that's a little drastic.
Well, let me
But-
tell you why I'm asking that, because I was considering sitting this property for an open house. Now, I can't go 8 hours without peeing, so.
Well, then I would call the listing agent and ask him if it's off at the street or at the house, and if you have permission to turn it back on. No.
Well,
But if I have a vacant listing, you're gonna go in there and the water's not gonna work. And then when the inspector comes, I go over and, or I have the seller go over and turn the valve out front back on. And for me, it's, like I said, I've had 2 houses completely flood and 1 killed a deal. And it was horrendous. Basically, the upstairs bathroom landed in the kitchen. And the kitchen was
And it was a malicious act?
amazing. Pardon me?
It was a malicious act, somebody turned the water on?
A kid. Hey, listen, I did that when I was little. I flooded I flooded our 2-story house. I plugged the sink in the bathroom, turned the water on, and, you know, as a kid, I didn't do it on purpose, I don't think. But an hour and a half later, sitting at the kitchen table, we noticed something unusual happening. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would like to say my mom doesn't have a lot of those stories, but I may have been that kid. All right, access and lockbox. Lockbox is a very big deal. It's high risk, it's high liability, and it's one of the only areas of our business where we open up people to crime. People actually use lockboxes to steal. The beauty of our system is, if you put a lockbox on the property, know how to use Supra to check who's been there in real time, have all the security systems hooked up so you know when someone's using your lockbox. Do not put a lockbox on a house without seller permission. Do not put a lockbox on a house without, in this one, line 94 checked and initials. Okay? Also, if you use mechanical boxes, you're asking for trouble. As a practical practitioner, I understand mechanical boxes have an important place, especially for like one of my properties that's a flip, that's always having contractors come back and do this and that, and the owner does not want to leave them with a key. As a real estate broker, I hate them because they're only 4-digit combinations. Agents tend to be very loose-lipped. Agents, and I've seen agents do this. They walk up when they're opening a mechanical box and they're reading the code and they say it out loud, 3465. Well, now the person with them can get in that house anytime. Article 1 of the Code of Ethics, Standard of Practice 116 clearly states, no one gets in a house other than exactly how agreed with by the seller. That's why it should be a super lock box. It should be protected, it should be coded, and everyone that uses that knows that there's a record of it. Another thing with security here, if your seller has a security and camera set up in their house, there's absolutely every reason in the world to use it. Never give someone a lockbox code if it's a mechanical box. Never do it. You're asking for trouble. You may be asking to get arrested. the scammers are back. They're saying, oh, I'm over here, I'm standing right out front, I see a mechanical box, can I go in? And then they're making a key, putting it under the mat, and leasing that house to 40 different people. And all the money is going to some other part of the world, and we get hung out to dry. If a seller, this is the lawyer in me talking, not me the lawyer that I used to work with, who's one of the top real estate attorneys in the state. This is him talking. If a seller does not want a lockbox, be very careful talking them into it. When you talk someone into taking risk, they're coming after you if they're sorry for taking that risk. Be eloquent. Advise them of the problems with that. Advise them that if there's not a lockbox, they're going to have to be available to let people in, and we'll not put a lockbox on, but every one of my listings being shown 3 times a day. If your house isn't being shown 3 times a day, don't blame me. It's probably the lockbox, but it's 100% up to you. Don't say anything like, I won't put a house on the market without a lockbox. If you're not going to put a house on the market without a lockbox, and they don't want to put a lockbox on it, you need to walk away from that listing. Because we never want to be in a position of encouraging people to take on liability. Make sense? That's just risk management, lawyer paranoia, ABC. All right, agency relationship. You need an agency disclosure and election with this for a listing. I reject as many of these as anything else. For a listing, you must check 41 and 42 only. Not 40, 41, and 42. Not just 41. 41 says we represent the seller's broker. The default no-brainer. 42 says agents from my home group, including you, can show the listing. An agency disclosure is instructions. It's not just a disclosure form. So if you only check 41, you're getting written instructions from your seller that no one from this company, including you, can show the house. My opinion, we have like 10% market share. That's probably a really bad idea. I don't know about you guys, I like showing my own listings. I tend to make more money that way. So make sure you check the right boxes. And for buyers, same thing, 34 and 36.
Can you do that like on the same form?
Huh?
Can you do that on the same form?
What?
Check if you're going to represent them for buyer and seller?
No.
Yeah.
That's a consent to limited door representation. Yeah. Now, if you're doing a for sale by owner, that's the one time you would check line 40, which is I'm representing the buyer's broker, and then you use an unrepresented seller compensation agreement. We're not dealing with that today. Compensation and broker cooperating brokers. On one version of this, it's on lines 89 and 93. This is on line 109 and 114. I'm sorry, 114 and 118. First of all, if you collect a retainer fee, a marketing fee, or any fee paid up front, it must be on here and disclosed. Just put it right there. Commissions. The broker produce a ready, willing, and able purchaser, tenant in accordance with this listing, or sales, execute a lease agreement, etc. Premises occupied by the premises made by the owner, or through warranty of broker, or otherwise during exclusive term of this listing. In other words, if any way somebody shows up, ends up buying this damn house, brokers, owner agrees to pay broker a total commission of. That is the gross. That must include the co-broke. Another reason I commonly reject listings. Say they're listing at, we're all my home group people, right? Say they're listing at 6% and paying a 3% co-broke. A lot of people put 3% here for the gross, and then on line 118 or 93, depending on which form they're using, they put 3% again. The gross must include the co-broke. If you put 3% for gross and you put 3% for co-broke, you're getting zero and coming out of pocket your transaction fee to my home group. Okay? The gross commission has to include the co-broke. We allow, under the premise, we're a 100% company. If you can afford to starve, we can afford to let you. You can charge whatever commission you want, as long as it includes my home group's part. Because you may be able to afford to starve, but you ain't going to starve us. So your commissions are fully negotiable, fully within your power. I will warn you, there are consequences for selling your soul cheap. You know, desperation can cause bad decisions. I want this listing really bad. Be careful doing high-end listings for very low amounts of money. You can very easily lose money. You have a certain value. Know your value, stand up for it, and don't compromise your value. On the other hand, if you're trying to get in a neighborhood, you got a chance to get your first listing in that neighborhood, and you got to make a deal to get it, and you think it's going to give you a foot in the door to 10 more listings, make the good business decision. Just don't be dumb about it. Yeah, Jermaine.
So if you list, or you put 3% on line 90,
Line 114 here.
line 114, can you go back and ask, or put 6% and have the seller initial?
Yeah, that's what I make people do. I had corrected, have initials, which is, it's a pain, and it's kind of embarrassing when you have to go back to your seller or buyer for an initial on something you really should have gotten right the first time, you know. All right, seller's initial at the bottom of every page, okay? Let's go to the top of the next page. Now, with regard to listing contract, broker intends to cooperate with all brokers except when not in the broker owner's best interest, Article 3 of the Code of Ethics, that's a quote, and to offer compensation in the amount of X% of the purchase price or flat fee dollars, okay? Let me go ahead, I'm gonna jump ahead and read. I'm going down. Oh, here we go. Any such compensation will not increase. There's nothing in here that says you have to fill out that box. Okay? You can put to be determined. You can leave it blank. Okay? I like to leave it blank, and brokers will argue this with me because I may want to float my co-broke. If I think the property is really hot, I may throw an MLS with a low co-broke, and if I don't sell it in a few days, jack the co-broke. I'm a mercenary son of a gun, and I believe co-broke is a tip, a gratuity, not an entitlement. And if someone doesn't have a buyer-broker agreement, then they should get whatever my cheap ass wants to pay them. That is your call between you and your seller. But if you're leaving it blank, your seller must clearly understand why you're doing it, and that there can be potential financial benefit to you. Otherwise, put a number in there. And then if you put a number in there and then you change it, that requires a total change form signed by the seller. All right, rentals, same rental commission, etc. Obviously, typically rentals are more often a flat fee than sales. If you have a holdover tenant, that you still get paid for that time after. And a referral, you set broker amount for compensation referring broker who has no broker relationship with the buyer owner. Any such compensation shall not include the total commission payable by the owner. Withdraw canceled listings. I believe there should be an initial box here. Because you can probably imagine after I read this, this is where I get the phone calls from clients. And I love talking to agents. I love talking to brokers. My least favorite part of my job is talking to clients, especially sellers. Why? Happy sellers don't call me. Angry sellers call me. Disappointed, disgruntled sellers call me. And they really don't understand this. The same amount of sale or rental commission shall be due and payable to the broker. I quote this thing 10 times a week. If, without consent of the broker, consent of the broker means we sign. By the way, when I say broker, I mean broker. The brokerage and you sign off on mutual cancellation. You have an agreement that was bilaterally created. You have an agreement to bilaterally terminate or cancel it. The premises withdrawn from this listing, otherwise withdrawn from sale or rental, or is rented, transferred, or conveyed by owner through any other broker otherwise, the entire commission is due and payable. Simple as that. All right. Purchased by tenant, we get paid. Then pay from escrow or rent, we get paid by title. We get paid from escrow. This constitutes instructions to title to pay us, which I'm happy to say works very well. The title industry is pretty good about putting us on a settlement statement and getting us paid. After expiration, this basically says, if my listing expires today, what's today, the 9th, 10th, whatever it is. My listing expires today, and I showed it at 5 o'clock this afternoon, and it expires at midnight, and the day after tomorrow, the buyer decides they want to buy the house. I put 180 days in here. If within 180 days I come back with that buyer, I'm still entitled to my commission because that truly is procuring cause. And although it expired, the actions that led to the sale happened before expiration. Here's the key on this one. Unless it's been listed on exclusive basis with another broker, okay? Or during the pendency, including closing and purchase contract relating to the premises that was executed open during the term of the listing, as contemplated in paragraph 6C we'll talk about. All right? Sellers can't cancel. Sellers can't withdraw. And when they do, they call me and I say, that's fine, we'll let you out, write us a check. And they go, why would I do that? You didn't sell the house. I say, well, because you need to read section 6G of your contract you signed, which nobody ever reads these things. All right, listing obligation and authority. Here's what it says we're going to do. Make diligent, continued efforts to sell, lease the property. We can put a sign in the yard. Okay? We can get information on their mortgage. We can get authorized to put it in MLS. Sign the yard, lockbox MLS. Wait. Yeah, that pretty much says that's what we're going to do. Now, we, the broker, reserve the right to cancel this unilaterally for cause, which shall include but not limit to broker's good faith belief that any service, broker, action undertaken by any other party broker could be determined to be in violation of applicable law. Other cause would be the seller stops letting people in the property. Other cause would be, and we had this a couple weeks ago, the seller went completely psycho and was cursing and screaming at the agent, everyone that showed the house, and the agent wanted nothing to do with these people. They'd rather not get a commission than get paid from that psycho. Okay? Owner acknowledged that broker is not responsible for the custody or condition of the premises or its management, except under separate contract, maintenance, upkeep, and repair. As a matter of fact, quite the contrary. Be very careful if you're involved in having any work done on a property. And let me remind you, if you have a listing and you're having work done and you pay for it, you now have a financial interest in the property which must be disclosed. If you're involved in doing work and you're getting money paid directly to you for money that's other than a direct reimbursement, you need to disclose that to all parties, and you're probably violating a law. Talk to us before you do that. Sellers pay for repairs. We help them find the people to do them, maybe. And remember, the licensed contractor threshold is $1,000. All right. We have to, section 10, we disclose what board we belong to and that we're bound by the code of ethics. Obviously, no one in this company is going to be checking out a member of the board, because to be part of my home group, you've got to be a part of the board, because we are, y'all are. Owner's obligations. They agree to cooperate. They agree to make the property available in reasonable time. What is reasonable time?
2 hours.
24 hours notice is reasonable. I say that, you had people that, night workers that sleep at home. You had people with multiple little children. You had people that work at home. Sometimes you want to take longer to show the house because you want them to have the house ready. When I worked at home, exclusively at home, I would not want my house, it would take me 4 hours to get my house ready to be shown, because my desk is a bloody disaster area. Always has been, always will be, and it would clutter. The rest of the house looked fine, and my ex would have killed me if someone walked through the door with my mess right there. So there would have been reason for me to need a little more time. Respect people, but also let your sellers know. Easier to show, more likely to go. Make sense? The more you get in, more likely you are to sell. And agents are busy, and they're going to... We're not just busy, we're lazy. And I don't blame us for being lazy. If I got 3 houses, same floor plan, same price range, pretty much same amenities, and 2 are really easy to show, and 1's a pain, I'm probably going to show the first 2 round 1, and if they buy one of those, I'm never going to make it to your house. So sellers really need to understand that their accommodation is in their best interest. As a buyer's agent, we also need to respect the fact that this is someone's house, this is their life, and having your house shown can be a disruption. And make sure your sellers know to tell you if there's some reason their house can't be shown. Because the worst case scenario, seller got beat up, like hospitalized, and got home. He got beat up in his house or in front of his house by a neighbor. Okay, agents were calling to show that house. He was telling them, because he was whacked out from getting the snot beat out of him, he was telling them what happened. What does that say? What are they going to tell the buyers? We might not want to see this house. This guy's got a crazy neighbor that put him in the hospital. So make sure your sellers have anything that interrupts your ability to have it shown. They get a hold of you, and if it's for more than 2 days, take it temporarily off the market. And people say, why is it temporarily off the market? Say because the seller has had things to deal with and can't have people in the house. It's very common holidays. I mean, I always took my listings off the market between December 24th and December 26th. Because there are agents out there that will actually call to show a house on Christmas.
I closed one in that time frame too, John.
Hey, you guys know Sylvia, my gal. First contract she ever wrote, Christmas Day, 2003. Actually, in the 2003, four. I sold a house on Christmas Day. I didn't show it on Christmas Day though. Well, I showed it before, but they were ready to write the offer on Christmas. They're afraid they're going to lose it. They thought if we write on Christmas, we got a better chance. I went, yeah, because I'm probably the only poor staff that's going to write a contract for someone on Christmas.
It won't get reviewed, but
I've never refused to write an offer for someone, except for when it was a $600,000 house and they wanted me to write a $175,000 offer. They said I read a book somewhere. I said, that was fiction. That's not a real estate investment book. That's a novel based on fantasy. All right, this is all the boilerplate. I'm not going to get into it. It talks about the Landlord-Tenant Act, talks about FIRPTA, talks about affidavit disclosure if it's raw land. Okay. Another thing the seller needs to be made aware of as part of your process, and I recommend you print out the stigmatized property law, ARF 322156. Print it out and give it to your seller as part of the listing package. When you deal with buyers, send them a copy of it. Because the seller needs to know that they have a liability shield for disclosing things. The seller may spill their guts and say there's a pervert 2 doors down. If they want to disclose that, they can. But they also need to understand legally they're not obligated to. They also need to understand that if someone asks a question, did someone die here? Did someone commit suicide here? Did someone here have HIV or AIDS, which is so stupid? Is there a sex offender in the area? They can't lie. So they need to be able to say, per law, I'm not going to answer that question. Learn to be DMB explains why you shouldn't lie. Maybe you shouldn't lie. Insurance. Ask your seller if they have insurance. If they're a flipper, they may be self-insured. Here's the problem with self-insurance. If the pipes burst, that seller is going to have, the investor is going to have to fix it themselves. If they're doing that, they probably have the money. Where they need to be worried is if the pipe burst, gets the floor wet, and a kid slides and breaks his damn head open, they don't have liability insurance or medical. And that's where they can get in trouble. So if you have someone who doesn't have insurance, ask them why and ask them what they're prepared to do in the event of accident or something would fall in the liability category. Because they all think it's about, repairing stuff that breaks. There's other parts of people being in your house. And although the contract indemnifies the seller from things that go wrong when the buyer's doing inspections and stuff, the listing doesn't. And it has veiled references that try to cover the seller, but historically sellers have been liable, but they didn't care because they had insurance. General warranty, standard stuff. Everyone has the legal capacity. Okay? Another question you want to ask people, and this may sound silly, do you own the house?
Not so silly.
And if they say yes, and it's just in their single, go just you. Are there any quitclaim deeds, disclaimer deeds? Have you transferred anyone? Have you borrowed any money that may not be on the public record? Because that comes down to a closing nightmare, and I come across a couple of those a year. Also, ask people if they're married. We had a seller. I feel so bad for this lady. Not a seller, a buyer. I feel so bad for this lady. I think it was 10 grand earnest money. She gets down to closing and had one loan condition. She was approved, had one loan condition. Disclaimer deed signed by her husband. She's like, I swear to God. She's like, oh crap, I forgot I was married. Haven't seen her talk to him in over 20 years. I don't know where he's at. She couldn't close. She lost her earnest money. So as odd as it sounds, ask people if they're married. If they go no, go, are you sure? Tell them that little story.
If it's in a trust, and he's the power of attorney of the trust, how do you?
Those are two different things. The trust, person that signs for a trust is a trustee.
Trustee.
Power of attorney is what I give you because I'm going to the hospital and I want you to be able to sign for me.
Because I have a situation, he's the trust and he has like the power because his wife passed
Right.
away. How do I go about that? Like,
If it's a trust and he's a trustee and it belongs to the trust, the remaining he would have that power. If it's probate, then he would sign as executor to the estate, or if it's joint tenants rights of survivorship, he would sign as seller and then deliver a copy of the death certificate.
okay.
And that's always kind of a creepy call.
And the title words about that? Title.
Yeah. Yeah. Just make sure he understands that depending on his status, he may need to provide a copy of the death certificate or the probate orders as an executor, or a copy of the trust that makes, if it's a living trust, that makes the fact that they passed away irrelevant. That's why you have a living trust. But that's a conversation to have with sellers up front, so they're prepared. And it is always a weird thing when you have to ask people for their dead spouse's death certificate.
It was weird. I was like, do you have the death certificate?
Yeah. It's traumatic. But they have to do it.
Yeah.
If it's in probate, in court, then and there's attorneys involved, you need to talk to the probate attorney and find out what the status is, and do we need judicial signature, et cetera. That's a little bit more of a pain. Which is why, please, everybody, get a living trust and avoid probate. It's such a nightmare. I've had friends whose parents literally would be rolling over their grave if they knew what their kids had to go through to get what they absolutely intended to forget. All they would have had to do was a living trust. They're pretty cool. There's a commercial for some retirement attorneys out there, huh? Probate attorneys? All right. Seller shall maintain continuous service of the premises of all utilities which are presently connected, okay? Now, they're agreeing not to have the power turned off. They're not agreeing to have water to the house, which is where that comes in. You have the water on, but it doesn't have to be actually usable. And please tell your sellers not to turn the power off. It makes an inspection nightmare. They have to get it turned back on. APS is a monumental pain in the tush, but they are nothing compared to SRP. Save yourself that hassle. We are relieved of liability for all these fancy little terms of this contract. Indemnify, they indemnify us. They get from the lockbox any facts that they did not disclose. And this indemnification survives closing. That's why sellers in most lawsuits, the seller's named first, and we're named second. We're always named because we have this magic thing called E&O insurance. But they do indemnify us to a certain level. So do our buyers, for that matter. This very clear. We can show this to as many people as we want. We can have multiple buyers that are looking for the same house, and that's allowed. We're not allowed. We don't have to do one buyer at a time. I can have 3 buyers for my listing and show all 3 and negotiate in good faith on behalf of all 3. I can do that. Let me tell you, having done that, that's the toughest day of your life, because you're limited as what you can say, and you typically know going in who's going to end up with a deal by their finances and stuff, but you can't give any indication of that. It ain't fun, but it is legal. Legally authorized right here. Attorney fees, they got to pay attorney fees. The entire agreement, let's get back to the last page. Put as much information on here as possible. Also load this information in SkySlope. Seller address, seller email, seller phone. My home group, I can assure you, does not, will not, has committed not to steal your clients, okay? Your clients are your clients. We don't want this information for that. This information is seen by a small group of people, myself, who literally doesn't care. I ain't gonna steal your client. Larry, Jeremy, and the administrative girls. Why do you want us to have access to that? You're at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, one of the few places on the planet that literally you don't exist, which is one of the reasons why it's so great to go there. You are you're in another world. You just seem to be on another planet. And I get a call from an agent that says they can't get a hold of you, and there's smoke in your listing. They called the fire department. I need to be able to call your seller and say, hey, your agent's out of town, we got a call from another agent, your house is smoking, the fire department's there, or it's flooded, or we got 4 offers, no one can get a hold of you. We're going to have someone to present those offers because we must present offers and all offers within a timely manner. Now, if you're going to be unavailable, please have someone to cover for you. But remember, and you want me there, you want Larry there, we are one of your first lines of defense as a backup. There's no reason to hide this information from us. It's in your database, they're your clients. We don't do that. If you're on a team, you may not own your clients. That's between you and your team agreement. But as far as the company, there is no downside and a major upside. Fill it all out. If you had 9 owners, we need 9 names and signatures. If it's a divorce, if it's a deployment, husband or wife are in Afghanistan, okay? They want us to list the house. One with an email from the husband or wife, the spouse saying, hey, I'm not going to be able to sign, I'm in the field, but I'm authorizing my wife to list the house. We will take a listing with 1 signature. If it's a divorce, we will not take a listing without 2 signatures. It's legally binding on whoever signs it. They're binding themselves. But we are not going to put ourselves in a position where someone has bound to pay us when there's an opposing party that may step in and cause difficulties for that. So if it's a divorce, we want signature of everybody. If there's multiple sellers and they're other than a spouse, someone on deployment, or anything else would make someone unavailable. I had someone ready for this. And it's amazing communication I had someone who was out doing 90 days on a rig, on oil rigs, and obviously they have very limited, they work 12-hour shifts. They have very limited access to computers and stuff. So we listed the house, and when he could, he signed all the papers. When he was closing, he was back, but there's a good reason to put a house on the market with one signature. Make sure they date it, okay? Broker firm name, that would be us. Please fill that out. Put your phone number down. Put fax number was a fax. That is so last millennium. I literally have not sent a fax in 4 years. I received one from an insurance company because insurance companies evidently haven't joined the new millennium. Most importantly, print your name and sign this thing. If you don't sign it, it is a worthless bunch of papers, words, and ink. And one day, someone in this company is going to lose a commission because they didn't sign their listing. And I guarantee you, it's not going to be a $73,000 condo, because those sellers aren't the people that are going to do that. It's going to be a $3.5 million mansion with a big, fat, gnarly commission that you lose, and co-broke you're going to have to pay. Any questions?
Yeah,
cool.
Where's delivery come in on that too?
Do what?
Where does delivery come in? I had clients who sat down with them, went through the whole thing, and had them sign it off. And I said, I will scan this at the office and send you a copy. And when I emailed it to them, I said, hit the reply button and tell me you received it.
Well,
Delivery.
if you're using wet signatures, that'll work. Here's my favorite. You take your phone, you take a picture of it, and you text it to them while they're sitting there and go, did you get it?
I see.
What? Elaborate. Well, wet signature is?
Wet signature, take a picture with your phone and text it to them. Acceptance and delivery. You sign it, they sign it, you take a picture. So it's literally while you're there, the thing beeps and they go, yeah, we got it.
Like,
But you got an iPhone, and actually, I love iPhone because we send an iPhone to an iPhone, it says red. Well, people say, I didn't get your text. I'm like, that's funny. At 9:44, it changed from delivered to red. Oh, okay, well, I guess I just moved past it. I love when people try to lie to me.
yeah.
Don't you normally have this like sample all over it?
Right?
Don't you normally have sample written all over it?
That's for
Buying.
the contracts for AR. Armless doesn't put the sample on because they want you to be able to print these things out and do them wet ink. So, profile sheet. We prefer a profile sheet. When you type into Armless, it creates one of these. All you have to do is print it, and you can send it for signatures. We do require a signature, If you don't do a profile sheet, we do require a signature on a copy of the MLS. The seller must acknowledge that they've seen all the information. You are splattering all over the planet about their home. Makes perfect sense, right? And it's very good because sometimes we make mistakes. Most recently, someone inadvertently, that's not a huge mistake, clicked owner agent. And the seller called on and said, hey, I don't have a real estate license. They say, they just literally checked the wrong box. But they'd be getting contracts that had owner agent. They'd be checking for the person's license online. So it's a good thing to have your seller review. You really want them to review and approve your remarks because sellers are really picky. Sellers hate the way I write remarks because I write like I talk. Yes, no, good, bad, ugly, pretty. I don't have a lot of superlatives. So they're like, can we use a word like, romantic tub? I'm like, absolutely. I would say big tub because, I'm not a romantic. So it's their house. Let them help you market. Anyway, that's pretty much it for the ER, just to beat you over the head with a little bit. Next week we go back to, 2 weeks from now, we go back to section 1 of the contract. There are a couple of new forms coming out. Anytime a new form comes out, I will start the next class with reviewing the new form. I haven't even read them yet. I just got the email that they're coming.
Oh,
all right.
I was going to go back and look at that because I pulled up the wastewater thing and it's not updated yet.